Hi, and welcome. Today's topic is stress. My name is Dr. Linsenberg. We may have met in your initial appointments with our bariatric surgery team. As this is a recorded session, please feel free to reach out to me directly or to any of the bariatric psychologists on our bariatric surgery team via your patient portal with any questions you may have after watching this seminar. The goals for this group are to better understand how stress affects our health, to introduce the science behind stress, and by the end of the group, you will be able to state at least 3 coping skills to better manage your stress. So before we move forward, I want you to ask yourself, what is stress and how would you define it? Consider for a moment how you would define stress in your own terms. So what is stress? Essentially, it is when environmental demands exceed our ability to cope. So generally, that means if our coping is insufficient or ineffective, regardless of what the demands are, we can feel overwhelmed. Then our stress can cause symptoms or make existing medical conditions worse. Stress is also referred to as the body's response to things it perceives as abnormal. Those abnormalities can be either physical or emotional. What is really important to note is that stress looks different and is unique to each and every one of us. We may all experience the same exact event, yet we all perceive and interpret the experience differently. What may cause stress in one person may not cause it in another. That is, of course, a wonderful part of just being human because we're all unique. I would like to encourage you to keep this in mind as we move forward, as we each have different types of stress, and even if in similar situations, we may all react differently. So, is stress always bad? Please take a moment to consider this question. The answer is no. Stress is not always bad. There is good stress. There's even a term to describe it called eustress. Positive life changes or events, such as a job promotion, an upcoming vacation, or building a new home, can be stressful too. Also, positive stress can be enriching, as it often comes across as anticipation or excitement. Some people thrive under stress or pressure as well. So stress can be useful sometimes. For example, some people find that they procrastinate a task until shortly before a deadline. The deadline provides just enough pressure or stress to get the job done. So in order to determine what is good stress versus bad stress, I want you to keep in mind the following. Good stress is typically acute or short-term and temporary. It comes across as anticipation or excitement. It might feel like gearing up for a challenge. Bad stress is typically chronic and persistent over a long period of time. It is generally associated with feelings of hopelessness or being overwhelmed. So this chart here represents the Yerkes-Dodson law, which is an empirical relationship between arousal and performance. It was originally developed by psychologists Robert M. Yerkes and John Dillingham Dodson in 1908. The law dictates that performance increases with physiological or mental arousal, but only up to a point. This chart shows that a medium level of stress actually puts us in the optimal position for high performance. If we have low stress, it shows this kind of sleepy guy here, versus if we have too much stress, it shows this disorganized or anxious person that is feeling outside of their control. Basically, stress is a natural and highly adaptive biological process that strengthens and safeguards us in many ways. After all, the body's classic sympathetic nervous system reaction to stress, which many of you may have heard being called the fight or flight response, can save your life in an emergency. I would also like to introduce you to the Social Readjustment Rating Scale, which was designed in 1967 to identify major stressful life events, both positive and negative, and to see how they impact our health over time. The creators made a list of 43 stressful life events, and each was awarded what they called a life change unit. And by adding up the number of life change units of an individual within just the last year, a score is created that indicates level of risk associated with developing health-related issues in the following 2 years. So the list on the left here is of the top 10 items in order, or basically the top 10 most stressful events. The column on the right here includes other items from the list of 43, but they aren't as highly ranked. And I wanted you to see the variety of what the creators considered some of the major stressful life events. This scale is also available online, and you can Google it if you are interested. You can complete the scale for yourself and learn more about yourself in this regard. So here's a quick quiz to test your knowledge. Please ask yourself now, which of the following are physical symptoms or medical conditions associated with stress? 1, poor judgment. 2, feeling isolated. 3, frequent colds. 4, chest pain. Or 5, all of the above. Take a moment and try to answer this to yourself now. The correct answer is number 5, all of the above. All of these symptoms are associated with stress. In the coming slides, we will look at these more closely. There are cognitive, emotional, physical, and behavioral consequences to chronic stress. And when stress starts interfering with your ability to live a normal life for an extended period of time, it becomes more dangerous. The longer stress lasts, the worse it is for both your mind and your body. Starting with the cognitive symptoms of stress, stress can lead to memory issues, trouble concentrating, poor judgment, seeing only the negative side of things, experiencing anxious or racing thoughts, and constant worrying. The emotional symptoms of stress can include moodiness, irritability or short temper, feeling agitated or having trouble relaxing, feeling overwhelmed, feeling a sense of loneliness and isolation, or feeling depressed or just generally unhappy. Some of the physical symptoms associated with stress can include experiencing aches and pains, experiencing diarrhea, constipation, or other GI issues, experiencing nausea or dizziness, chest pain or a rapid heartbeat, a loss of sex drive, or frequent colds. Some of the behavioral symptoms associated with stress include eating, more or less, it can be presented in either way, sleeping too much or too little, which also can be presented in either way, isolating yourself from other people, procrastinating or neglecting responsibilities in general, using any kind of substance to help relax or escape from reality, including alcohol, cigarettes, or other drugs to relax. Nervous habits, including nail biting, pacing, twirling, or pulling at your hair. So ask yourself now if you can relate to any of these symptoms when you feel stressed. Which ones stand out to you? Let's transition into a discussion about the science behind stress. So the nervous system is built up of different branches, all of which are vital to the human body. The autonomic nervous system has two parts, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. And we'll briefly review this now. The sympathetic nervous system is also nicknamed the fight, flight, or freeze response. This is basically the system that is activated when we are in emergency situations. I like to think of this as the dinosaur brain and have an example to help you remember. So let's practice together for a moment to help you understand. So I want you to imagine you are walking through a jungle 100 million years ago. You walk into a clearing and find a dinosaur standing there. The brain and the body have three ways to handle the situation: flight, fight, or freeze. Freezing in front of a dinosaur or fighting a dinosaur are both self-correcting responses. They probably will not keep you safe from the dinosaur. So you were probably running. And as you run, biology kicks in. Your body wants to keep you safe. So your heart beats faster and your breathing changes as you're in a heightened state of alertness and readiness. The thinking brain goes offline and waits for the dinosaur brain to give the all clear before it kicks back into executive functioning. This is what is happening before that dinosaur. Remember, you were running from a dinosaur, so worrying about picking up your kids from school, taking out the trash, or going to the grocery store don't matter in that moment. The brain will make survival-based choices when in dinosaur brain. Similarly, the nervous system is heightened as the body produces stress chemicals out of necessity. The problem is that we aren't thinking as clearly. Decision-making is skewed, and the central nervous system is too heightened due to the survival response. So, of course, we are not running from actual dinosaurs. However, when we feel stress, threatened, or in danger, our hearts begin to race and our breathing changes. These biological responses are how we know our nervous system is in fight or flight. Thankfully, we can step out of the dinosaur brain and into the thinking brain by using diaphragmatic breathing or other relaxation techniques to activate our parasympathetic nervous system. Our parasympathetic nervous system has the nickname rest and digest, and it is the complete opposite. This is activated when the body is at rest. All of our regular bodily functions are working as they should, and our frontal lobe is activated, allowing us to engage in higher order thinking, judgment, and processing. We are now going to watch a brief video that will further explain how chronic stress affects your brain.
WGU's Pre-Licensure Nursing Program is your ideal opportunity to become an RN and earn your bachelor's in nursing.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all, though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So basically, from early on in our lives, we all experience life situations that begin to shape the way that we see the world. We begin to develop safety and danger signals based upon events, feelings, and thoughts about the world around us. From early on in our lives, we all experience a variety of events and start to interpret them from a very young age and create an alarm system in the brain that tells us when we need to go into fight or flight mode. It can be helpful to think about your sympathetic nervous system as a smoke detector. It is designed to alarm you when you face a threat. However, when we are stuck feeling like the smoke alarm is broken and going off unnecessarily, this can keep us stuck in the danger mode. So when that alarm system becomes a little faulty or broken, we may start having alarms going off telling us that we're in danger when we're really not. It can become perpetually stuck in this faulty alarm system. We all can. We can get stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze mode, even when we're not in front of our own version of that dinosaur. And constantly being in this state is really hard on the mind and body. So part of stress management is activating the parasympathetic response by challenging those faulty alarms and bringing in a sense of safety. There are physical reactions to being stuck in the fight, flight, or freeze mode for a long period of time. In fact, when in this mode, the body starts to seek out fat and glucose to help cope with stress. In addition, the body releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol to help manage the stress as well. In addition to that, the body is working to gather up strength to run or gear up to face the challenge. So all of the physical components, like an increased heart rate, faster and shallower breaths, increased blood pressure, and increased blood sugar, and increased cholesterol and triglycerides, are all impacted here. So all of this can really impact our health. It can make us more susceptible to infectious diseases, including colds and flu. It can impact our heart health, our GI health, and the airway overactivity that can precipitate an asthma attack. There is significant physical impact on our health from our stress. And of course, in addition to all of this, stress can also lead to emotional eating, which can impact weight gain. Emotional eating is really common. A lot of us eat for emotional reasons at times. Stress is a major contributor to emotional eating. And there is a physiological explanation for some of this. We are, as humans, programmed to crave carb-heavy foods when we're stressed, and we are designed to store those calories for future energy needs. And so this is something natural, and it explains why a lot of us do this. So of course, this can then contribute to weight gain as we are consuming extra calories, increasing glucose levels, and increasing fat storage. So let's shift gears so we can begin to identify our stress. Like the video we just watched says, it is not all bad news. We can begin to manage stress better, but it all starts with identifying it. If you already watched class 4 on eating behaviors already, you may recall we discussed building awareness with the daily thought record. We would utilize the same technique here, at least to start, as we need to build awareness. You may already have a lot of awareness into what causes you stress, but if you don't, this may be helpful for you. We need to figure out where our stress is coming from in the moment by identifying triggers. As I mentioned before, if this is something you would like more information on, please reach out to your bariatric psychologist for more resources and information. So let's talk about managing stress. Now that we have figured out what is causing us stress, we can talk about how to manage it. First things first, it is crucial to note that you cannot eliminate all of the stress-provoking challenges in your life. We cannot get rid of it, and we don't expect you to. However, you can choose how you will react to and manage the stressors that typically trigger you. I also want to say that I understand that changing habits in itself can be stressful. As we talk about exercise and eating healthier, and all of these things that we know help with our stress levels, just making that change in your life can be stressful in itself. I want to recognize and acknowledge that that can be difficult, as it may feel like these changing behaviors are adding stress in your life. If, for example, you're trying to, say, fit in a workout when you already feel like you don't have enough time in your day. There's also the consideration of feeling deprived from certain foods or activities, which can be stressful. And then as well, the stress that comes from the impact on relationships with people in your life who may not be supportive of these changes, or they simply don't understand the demands. Again, I want to acknowledge that this can be a stressful component. So with that being said, we are going to watch another quick video as an introduction to stress management.
As you probably know, our mind affects our body for better and for worse. There's a powerful connection between what we feel and what happens to us. We tend to think that stress comes from outside ourselves, and so we have to choose between leading an interesting, productive life that's filled with stress and you die early, or sitting under a tree and watching your life go by. That isn't the choice, because the stress comes not so much from what happens to us, but more importantly is how we react to what's happening to us. And so if we practice even a few minutes a day, some simple stress management techniques, then we can be in the same job, the same environment, even the same family, and react in different ways. Dr. Elizabeth Blackburn did a study of women who were under chronic emotional stress. This was the first study showing that chronic stress may actually shorten your lifespan. And by practicing stress management techniques, they could actually change their perception of what was happening to them to make it less stressful, and therefore it didn't affect them nearly as much. Stress management techniques include stretching, breathing, meditation, imagery, and relaxation techniques. You have a spectrum of choices with stress management. If you're trying to reverse a life-threatening illness like heart disease, the best results come from doing the stress management techniques for 1 hour per day. The consistency is more important than the duration. Sometimes people say, I don't have an hour today to do this. I say, well, do you have a minute? And I play this with myself sometimes too. It's like if I have to admit that I don't have a minute, then I have to acknowledge my life is so out of balance, I'd rather just do the meditation. Sometimes people say things like, I have a short fuse and I explode easily. But when you practice stress management techniques on a regular basis, it makes your fuse longer. The more you do, the better you feel and the better you are. These stress management techniques are not about withdrawing from the world, they're about embracing it more fully, because they quiet down our mind and body enough to experience more of an inner sense of peace and joy and well-being. One that doesn't come because we got something we thought we needed, but rather to stop disturbing what we already have. And the paradox is, we can go out in the world and accomplish even more without getting stressed out and sick in the process. Athletes know this. They're always looking for a competitive advantage. And at a world-class level, there's not that much difference between athletes physically. It's a mental game. And so they're using imagery, they're using meditation because it works. So whether you're in sports or in business or in school, when you can focus better, you can perform better. It's a little bit like surfing. When you're first learning how, even the small waves can knock you over. But as you get better at it, you begin looking for the big waves because it's more of a challenge, it's more fun. Do the form of stress management that appeals to you. There are lots of ways of doing it. But if you can make it a continual practice, something that you do a little bit every day, you'll find it can transform your life.
So as they just mentioned, there are a lot of different ways to manage our stress. Going back to what we discussed at the beginning of the talk today, with how stress is unique to each of us, so is how we manage our stress. It is going to look different for each of us, as we will each benefit differently from different stress management techniques. There are so many different approaches you can take. One is just organizing your time better, setting SMART goals, which is the acronym that stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and trackable. When we set goals for ourselves, what we really want is to meet all of these qualifications so we can really ascertain when we're making progress. So a part of that is setting realistic goals and taking those goals and breaking them down into smaller short-term goals. Goals that take about a week to achieve so that they do feel attainable and we are feeling motivated from the progress that we make. It is also important to prioritize what is most important to you and to establish what are the goals that are most meaningful to you at this point in your life. So making lists can help you to stay organized and focused on these goals. And then, of course, planning ahead. Now that you've done the work to know what triggers your stress, you can plan for these situations and utilize tools and techniques to address these in the moment, or plan beforehand to work around or through them. An important technique for managing stress is learning how to set boundaries in both your personal and professional life. Practicing delegating and setting reasonable expectations for both yourself and others. Practicing good assertive communication skills, like saying no or turning down requests for help from others when you recognize that that in itself is going to cause additional stress for you. And then, of course, on the flip side, asking for help when needed. Sleep is, of course, incredibly important. Stress tends to keep a lot of us up at night. Stress keeps more than 40% of adults up at night, in fact. So our sleep hygiene is important. Sleep hygiene is not just about cleanliness, as you may think, but about creating really healthy and friendly sleep habits in a friendly sleep environment, like starting to associate your bed and bedroom with primarily sleep, going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time each day, limiting any kind of substances that may keep you up at night, limiting any distractions with light, like the TV, computers, phones, tablets, anything in that hour before bedtime. I will say e-readers are often okay because they're made for a sleep-friendly environment, But really looking at the hour before bedtime and giving your brain the opportunity to calm down and signal to itself that you are readying yourself for bedtime. You can also think about the sleep friendliness of your bedroom by looking at the decor of your bedroom, the temperature, the lighting. Is your bed comfortable, including the mattress, the sheets, the pillows? You want to set up your environment for optimizing your success with sleep, especially if you do struggle with sleep. And of course, exercise. As I'm sure we've all heard, exercise is medicine. Exercise increases production of endorphins. It is your body's natural mood booster. Exercise during the day can help with sleep at night as well. And then there's the actual relaxation techniques. So there are some things you can incorporate into your day, including formal relaxation exercises such as diaphragmatic breathing, guided or visual imagery, mindfulness meditation, or even progressive muscle relaxation. These are all techniques that can fit into your day-to-day routine, even if it's just for a few minutes, like the video said. You can fit it in at a specific time of day to help you remember to do it, like right when you wake up, or right before bedtime, or right before you eat lunch. And at first, you can try just 2 to 3 minutes and put on a timer so it doesn't feel like a huge burden you're adding to your day. And again, as I mentioned before, if you are interested in learning more about any of these techniques or topics, please feel free to reach out to me or one of the other bariatric psychologists for more information. Finally, last but not least is practicing good self-care. And a lot of us don't do this. We do not practice good self-care. Many of us put ourselves last. We don't take time to just enjoy for the sole purpose of enjoyment. I would recommend finding something you can do for yourself. It really doesn't matter what it is, that just something that you do just for joy. Please try to find even a few minutes each day to incorporate this into your life. Of course, more time would be better, but if you are struggling to find time, just a couple minutes is better than nothing. So try that and see how it feels. Finally, there are the cognitive strategies to help manage your stress. As we discussed, first is identifying the stressor and taking control from that perspective, recognizing that there are things outside of your control, and then starting to look at some of your unhelpful thinking patterns. We like to call these thought traps, and there are tons of thought traps like jumping to conclusions or mind reading or saying, I should do this or I should be that. Those are what we call should statements, or really focusing on the negative and ignoring the positive, or using what we call all or nothing thinking and only seeing the extreme. We all utilize these thought traps on a regular basis, but if you find that you are stuck in using some of these often, or they're impacting your stress levels or general mood, this might be an area to give some attention to. So one of the techniques to address negative thought patterns or thought traps is called reframing. I want to do an exercise with all of you before the end of our seminar today. So please take a moment to get a piece of paper and a pen, and you can go ahead and pause the video now to go get this. Okay, so you have your pen and paper. I want you to write down your current to-do list for today. It can be short, just like mine on the screen. You can pause this video while you jot this down. And then once you're done, take a few breaths. Writing down a to-do list can sometimes increase our stress, so practice breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Okay, so now we are going to practice reframing our stress with one little trick. We are going to cross out the have tos and write in get to or choose to instead. You can rewrite the list or read it aloud to yourself. Go ahead and do that now. How did that feel to make that shift? Please write down your thoughts on your quiz for today's class. While this practice is just a quick shift in the language you are using with yourself, you can truly change the perspective and increase the feeling of gratitude or happiness. It can be a handy tool to have in your back pocket when you're working on techniques to better manage your stress. So we're going to do another quick exercise before we wrap up our class today. I started our discussion today with the goal that each of you can think of 3 coping skills or techniques to utilize to manage your stress. So I have on the screen some random examples, but you can write down anything that comes to mind that you either already do or do to manage your stress, or that you would like to start doing following our discussion today. So please write these down on the quiz for today's class. As we wind down, I do want to reiterate to all of you that it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to ask for help with managing your stress. The bariatric psychologists on our team are here to support you, and please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Please feel free to reach out to us, any of the bariatric psychologists on the team, if you have any questions at all or would like additional support with our topic from today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.